Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus and I welcome you to Brian's Drive-In Theater with Brian Walker. Greetings, Brian. How are you?
I am well tonight, Hercules. How are you doing?
I'm doing great and looking forward to your presentation of the school system.
Well, you know what? Most of my career has been spent in higher education. And right now we're on spring break this week. We have, after we come back from spring break, we have 6 weeks and that's it. We're done. Unfortunately, things happen to students during spring break. And so it got me thinking, and I thought, gosh, should I approach this topic or not? But I'm going to go ahead and do it and talk about spring break horror films. And I know that sounds like a really specific subgenre, but you'd be surprised how many spring break horror films there are. I am not embarrassed to say that I've actually seen most of them, of the ones that my research dug up. Several of them in the theater too. Now that I see it, there's all kinds of these films. As you might guess, a lot of them are either 80s based or I mean, were shot in the 80s, as so many slasher films were, especially teen slasher films. Or are callbacks to the 80s. Piranha 3D, I think, was probably a really good representation of that. And I can remember going to see that about a dozen or so years ago because it was a spring break kind of thing. And I wanted to see it. And I also wanted to, I'm all about novelty, and I wanted to see how the 3D effects were. As I recall, they were pretty good.
That one I don't think I caught in the 3D, but I'm sure I caught it on DVD or VHS
or on any number of channels. AMC. I mean, it's hard to tell. 3D looked pretty good, as I recall.
My wife and I were talking about Dracula 3D the other day, and did you Dracula, Andy Warhol's Dracula 3D?
Yes. I have never seen that in 3D.
I saw it in the theater when it first came out. And yes, I was too young to watch the movie, but back then...
Somebody had permissive parents.
Lived in a different world. I had a beard and mustache when I was 11, so...
I know, but that was an X-rated film.
Yeah, yes, it was.
I mean, by today's standards, no. But back then, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably mid to late teens when I first saw that too. But I did the respectable thing and I rented it in a disreputable VHS rental store. Cause it was a copy. It was not the original videotape. It was just a copy of the videotape, but I wanted to see it, and I pulled it out of the case. And I'm like, what the, but I was like, I gotta see it. And I rented Frankenstein, Andy Warhol's Frankenstein at the same time. And to tell you the truth, I don't think I would have been old enough to rent X-rated films at that time.
And yet here we are.
Well, yeah, and probably still emotionally scarred from. But speaking of being emotionally scarred, a lot of this is a real time travel for me, because a lot of the films in the category of spring break horror, like I said, are either throwbacks or callbacks to the 80s or were produced in the 80s. And there's, like I said, there's a number of them. One of my favorites is an early one. And this has been a favorite movie of mine since I saw it in the theater back in the late 70s. Tourist Trap. It's a really fun horror film, pretty low budget, but it stars Chuck Connors, who's a very, very bad man in Tourist Trap. And my fear of the South is pretty well documented. And it's places like that, like the hotel that he's got, or the building that he's got in Tourist Trap. I think that's where that impression of mine probably comes from. Interestingly, Tanya Roberts, who was a Bond girl and was on, I believe, the last season of Charlie's Angels, and was also on, I think, that '70s show for a little while. Is in the film as a victim. I hope that's not a spoiler for anybody out there. And tonight, or today's movie of the day at Brian's Drive-In Theater is not a spring break movie, but it is scholastically themed, and it is Satan's School for Girls, which is an Aaron Spelling made-for-TV ABC movie of the week from September of 1973. That's when it originally aired. And Kate Jackson and Cheryl Ladd are among the stars of that film. And interestingly, they went on to star in Charlie's Angels, which was also produced by Aaron Spelling Productions.
So that is how those things connect with each other.
Well, when production dollars are tight, you want people who are going to show up knowing their lines and knowing how to hit their marks and knowing how to get through a scene quickly. So if they did it for you once before, chances are they can do it again.
Yes.
And
very true.
That's why you see, if you watch old TV shows, and I watch a lot of them, whether I want to or not. Perry Mason, there's a really good example of that. Hardly anyone was ever on Perry Mason only once. I guess if they worked out, Raymond Burr called you back. So, but that's also great for me, because I would be willing to say that I bet at least 40% of the actors that I have profiled at the drive-in were on Perry Mason. I probably as high as 40%.
Well, and the directors have their troops. Like, for instance, Tim Burton, he has his regulars that appear.
I was thinking John Waters.
John Waters, yes, that's true too. I haven't thought about John Waters. Oh God, maybe like a decade or two.
I don't know what the status of the project is, but it's been forever since he made a film. I think his last one was A Dirty Shame. I believe that's what it was called, which I actually liked. It was Johnny Knoxville and Tracy Ullman. And I liked it. Now, some of his later films for me are either hot or cold. I did not like Pecker. I didn't like Cecil B. Demented. In fact, I couldn't get through Cecil B. Demented. I could actually watch Pecker from beginning to end, but Cecil B. Demented, I just couldn't hang with. I tried. I didn't like Crybaby.
I saw Crybaby. I saw Pecker. I didn't see Cecil B. Demented.
Just don't.
Okay.
don't. There are other movies that I'm sure are on your movie bucket list that you can go ahead and catch one of those. Put that in front of Cecil B. Demented. But I can remember being really excited for, and I know this is an incorrect segue, but I remember being really excited to see Crybaby, and when I saw the finished product, I was like, oh man, I saw it in the theater too, and I sat there for the whole 94 minutes or whatever it was, but just didn't care for it. And as much as everybody had liked Hairspray, I had pretty high hopes. So, like I said, some of his later output is, hot and cold. But he hit his troop regulars because they as we were talking Tuesday night, they show up. So isn't that everything?
That is very, very true.
Or it's being awake is also part of it, but just showing up, like I said on Tuesday, is 90% of life, and certainly in employed life.
Now, horror movies take innocuous parts of life and make them horrible or frightening. So I guess
that is the horror of it. If your life's already horrifying, how are you going to scream when the monster is chasing you? It's that juxtaposition it's the whole motivator for the film. In a way, it's for comedy and horror. Really, when you have two worlds colliding, that's where it gets good. Works for a lot of Westerns, science fiction. It's sort of the story that Americans really like, where you have two opposites coming together, almost like Green Acres or something like that, which was brilliant, by the way. I've always thought so. Anyway, the rural sitcoms that were on CBS in the '60s, some were better than others, but that was my favorite. I like how surreal it was. And the same thing goes for horror. Something idyllic such as Spring Break, in the past we've also talked about vacation horror films, where vacation is supposed to be your getaway from all your stresses and stressors, I probably should say, only to find out that the hillbillies are going to kill you, or from The Hills Have Eyes, or something horrific happens, and that's, like I said, that's always the motivation for particularly horror films. But it also works really well for comedies too. And Greg says hi, by the way.
Hi, Greg. How you doing?
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I'm okay for thank you. Bye.
Nice to hear your voice.
Well, like I said, I've been banished to the family room, so he comes and visits every once in a while.
That's kind.
But anyway, as you were mentioning, that collision of two worlds, the good and the bad, is the story for every horror film, and I kind of like it when like I said, two opposite ends come together, then you get all those wonderful shades of gray. So and the thing I like about horror films too is that your moral compass, your moral center, can change from scene to scene.
Mm-hmm.
What you find acceptable, in most cases, we would never think of murder as being acceptable. But when somebody is chasing you, with a knife through a cornfield, killing them all of a sudden seems like a really good idea. And when the protagonist does so, you get big cheers. So I like that too. I like to see morality play out in horror films, where there is often very little, as it turns out. But that's part of the human experience too. Given whatever situation we're faced with, we can make some decisions that ordinarily we wouldn't make, but dire circumstances have forced them.
Very, very true.
And it has made for some great horror films, and the Spring Break horror films that I've researched for tonight's show and watched, some of which I wasn't able to readily see a copy of. So I now have a to-do list when it comes to cinema. There's a couple of films, both of which I can only seem to find on Blu-ray or DVD. I can't find them streaming anywhere, and they fit well into our category. One's called Nightmare Beach. Nightmare Beach is a horror film made in the late '80s, and it's Florida, and John Saxon's in it, and he's a cop, as he is in all of those '80s movies that were Italian, largely. But I wanted to watch this film so badly, and I couldn't because it's not available anywhere. The direction of the film has often been credited to Umberto Lenzi, an Italian director who made scores of films, scores of horror films. Really, of all the Italian horror film directors, I would say his are the bloodiest, the most excruciating, and I mean excruciating in a good way when it comes to horror film. Some of the deaths in his films really make you blanch, and make you recoil. There's nothing ordinary or dry about them. There's splatter everywhere. And that was his calling card. I mean, that was his business card, I guess I should say, not calling card. There is some question as to whether he directed it or someone else, one of the other writers of it. However, it has a really good 80s American feel to it for a film that is really Italian, which I find really interesting. But there again, I want to see this movie a lot, so I can't really give anything away. I did watch I watched several trailers for it, and I was able to catch a few scenes on YouTube here and there that had just been plucked out for their kind of shock value. And I really want to see the movie now. It looks terrific, and it wasn't on my radar. And I was anymore, when you can't find something on YouTube, it's almost shocking. And I was sure when I first started reading about this film, I thought, oh, I'm going to hit YouTube and it'll be right there. No, it's not.
Have you tried Tubi?
So
I'm finding that everything's on Tubi.
Well, that is a good source for things, but I looked through Amazon. I ran searches on Google, and if you want to see it, you got to buy a copy of it. And it was what I saw of it over the last couple of days makes me want to buy
A copy of it?
Yeah, so I'm totally fine. Well, I still like my physical media.
Yeah,
I haven't bought much of it. Well, after a while, you get everything that you want, or well, everything that's available. So it's not all that frequent when I stumble upon something that I can only find in physical media, and B, that I want to buy. But this is one of those movies. Really, really interested in seeing it because it looks really gross in spots. It's also kind of hypersexualized too, at least from at least from the trailer that I saw. It looks pretty naughty, and it is rated R. But it also seems to fit into that stereotypical mold that was set years ago by Friday the 13th, where these teens come together and there's debauchery and there's a killing spree. It fits right into that. Only with Nightmare Beach, it's during spring break and it's shot in Florida. As a number of 80s horror films that were made by Italians were shot in Florida. I think for that reason, just to give it, kind of that feel. I think when a lot of people, first come to the United States, I think Florida is a really popular destination. At least, it has been for the last 30 or 40 years. Used to be a cheap, I shouldn't say cheap, I should say an inexpensive destination as well. Inexpensive flights, affordable lodging and so forth. It made it attractive for a lot of people. If you go to Los Angeles or New York, those are expensive cities. And we're back then as well.
During the time that these movies were being made, also the Mondo movies were popular, like Mondo Cane, and cannibal movies were very popular.
Yes,
also,
and a lot of Italian cannibal
And these things, I believe, influenced every other horror film that was coming out at the time, because it kind of like carnage spilled over into everything. And everything was kind of like a blood fest for a while.
Plus, I've never really thought about this too much, but don't you find it interesting that, another juxtaposition here is that you have these, young, vital, vibrant teens who have everything to live for, and you just start stacking up their bodies in these films. Don't you find that? You find that interesting?
You're cutting out. I'm not able to hear the whole question.
Let me back.
The sound.
Try it again.
That's stuttering.
Don't
you find it odd that young people with lots to live for, and I got that far, and then it started cracking up.
Okay. All these young people who have lots to live for, they're in high school or college, and they're fornicating and smoking pot and drinking beer, which is what you should be doing at that age, quite honestly. And then they're well, but then they're made to pay for it because some prude kills them. It sounds like being in Tennessee. See, my fear of the South is coming out. So.
I can see that, and the way things are going recently in places like Tennessee, it's surreal and it's scary.
It sure is. I mean, you think that well, gosh, this is the 21st century. People don't think like that, and yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
The Evil Dead is another spring break horror film, and that was one that I thought of almost right off the bat when the topic kind of hit me. Piranha 3D was the other one that I thought of, and then April Fool's Day. That one came to mind. Those three came to mind. But the first Evil Dead movie, I think a lot of people forget, was a really good thriller. And it made Bruce Campbell. I mean, it took a while, but it made him, a household name. After a while. Yeah. And he's sort of like Jimmy Buffett. I mean, he had one hit, but essentially. Now, one of his latest films has been on my movie bucket list that I haven't seen yet, called Black Friday, which came out, I believe, a couple of years ago or so. And it's a Christmas horror film. And I want to see it and just haven't done it yet. I think I had it in my Amazon Prime queue there for a while, but I just never got around to watching it. But Evil Dead, there again, another great spring break horror film.
The Evil Dead 2 is basically a remake of Evil Dead 1 or Evil Dead. And then they did the Army of Darkness.
But Evil Dead was a straight up horror film. I'm not sure I can say that for Evil Dead 2. And maybe it's just me, but there is something about a low budget horror film that sometimes it makes them grittier, I think, because they do have to, they are, some of the shots do look kind of haphazard, but that also adds to the fleeing, I guess, when the victim attempts to get away from whatever is trying to kill him, her, it, and there's, you can't make cheap dramas, but I think cheap horror movies are the most effective ones, quite honestly. Big budget horror films, not that they can't work, because I've seen some that have just been fantastic. A lot of Hitchcock's films come to mind, but it seems to be almost harder to do it the more your budget is. I don't know if it's because you're not as creative, but I find myself disliking a lot of the bigger budget horror films, and I love the ones that just have no money at all.
Well, even the
There's
one
something about the concept.
that had very little money. They borrowed money from family and from
Mhm.
some local businesses that knew them, and it was phenomenally creative. And like you said, it launched Bruce Campbell's career. He was on my TV show when I had a TV show.
Mhm.
Bruce Campbell, and he was doing a signing in New York of his book, something about chins. I remember. I don't remember the title of the book, but he wound up on my TV show, and we filmed it. It wound up most of it on the cutting room floor, but I really enjoyed interviewing him. He was a very interesting person.
Well, and if you watch his earliest performances, like Evil Dead, he was a nice looking guy. I mean, he actually could have been, a matinee idol. He was a good looking guy. Like, and he's still, I think he still looks very good, especially, oh God, I almost said for his age. Isn't that awful? That is such a backhanded compliment. I can't believe I almost said that, but I did.
You did. He's now in a lot of Marvel movies because of his connection with Sam Raimi, who did
Yes.
that. And now you see him in a variety of Marvel movies and in different, small roles.
But I think his career is fascinating if you think about it, though, because he is best known for this cheap little, well, inexpensive little horror film that's very effective, by the way, and a lot of fun to watch. Cheap coming out of my mouth is by no means a bad thing when you're talking about films for the most part. But as you said, he's made a million cameos. He's had a career in a lot of different parodies and such, and very effective ones. But this is the film that actually launched. This is why he's here now.
Yes.
That this little movie, Evil Dead, which was like over 40 years ago.
And I liked him especially in Bubba Hotep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a while back now too. Yeah, that is an interesting film.
And he can't escape the role of Ash, which he played in The Evil Dead. He was on a short-lived television series as well as that character.
I did not know that.
Yes, there's an Evil Dead. He made the Evil Dead 1, or just Evil Dead, the Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness,
Yeah.
and then the show, the movie The Evil Dead was remade with a whole new cast. It wasn't
Right.
it was okay as for a horror film.
Yeah.
It wasn't as good, I felt. And then
No, remakes never are.
And he reprised his original character, I guess, as in The Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, and it took place, I think, in modern times. I saw the first couple of episodes.
I did not know that was a thing. I had no idea. But going back, remakes, there's got to be a compelling reason to do a remake. I understand why a lot of studios did them in the 30s and 40s, because they wanted to update them with better sound and perhaps color, or at least better photography or something like that. But I'm not really sure why now that we're doing that. And I've frozen up again.
Yes, you have, but it passes, it seems. The remakes, yeah, they don't make sense to me to do the remake so often. If something was exceptional, or it had a story behind it where it was suppressed or something, and they wanted to come up with the earlier version or an original vision for it, then I'd be okay with it. But why watch the movie again? You've seen it.
Well, I mean, and that really extends to other art as well. I usually don't like remakes when it comes to music. Maybe it's because I'm so old now that I remember all the original stuff.
I know you feel.
But so often the remake of a song that you love is just, it's practically note for note, only it's sung by somebody else who doesn't have as much talent.
Yeah, in a different way.
Well, and there again, I think the earnestness or the honesty of the original is always going to come through, no matter what the quality. And a remake is just trying to borrow off that. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it, but I'm saying that it's probably not for me, However, I know for younger generations, if you do mention something like Evil Dead, if they're not dyed-in-the-wool bona fide horror films, they will think of the remake and not the original. But I get that because that's what they've seen.
I wonder with the remakes, some of them are so drastically different. Why not just make a different movie and just call the characters something else?
Well, we don't want to do that if the title has name recognition.
Good point.
Because even if it is completely unrelated, you still want that title to get butts and seats at the theater, or to get downloads. And maybe that might be a better way to put things now. But yeah, it's the familiarity of the title, and if it's sold once, it'll sell again. And yeah, I hate to say it, but largely that is true.
Clash of the Titans, not exactly themed as the movies we're focusing on today, but I remember I would have seen the new Clash of the Titans anyway, even if it wasn't Clash of the Titans, because it's a peplum type of film. But I totally unnecessary. That it was different enough from the original and the subsequent cartoon that was made that they could have called it anything and just called the character something else. It would have been another movie. It was another movie already. It just had very thin references and Easter eggs that related to the original. But I felt that it detracted from the movie to have it called after like a totally different movie that it had very little to do with.
Yeah, but there again, you borrow the title because you want the recognition of it. You want to borrow from something that did sell before, because, like I said, it'll probably sell again, especially with horror films.
So it's like clickbait on the computer.
Oh, doesn't it drive you crazy? I don't fall for it much anymore, but every once in a while, if I'm trying to find some information fast, or what I have found, I search for different kinds of information for my job and from personal things. And what I have found is that when I'm searching for general medical information, like I have psoriatic arthritis. So I've been, I was diagnosed, not that long ago, about 6 months ago, and had it. Had a bad case of it even before that, until they figured out what it was. When I was trying to research, what I might have, and then after I got the diagnosis, what I did have, it's all clickbait. If you don't hit the Cleveland Clinic website, or Mayo, or UPMC, or something like that, it is garbage that is cut and paste. Written. I don't know if it was written by artificial intelligence or what, but it's garbage. It's junk. It's just junk, and it has no meaning. And it all it does is state the obvious. And I will admit this: some of the writers of this garbage are great at obfuscation. They just keep. You read it and you're moving from paragraph to paragraph, and you're never getting the information that you were promised that you were. And it's an art form. I don't know who who came up with this. I've been teaching writing for a long time. I guess I should preface what I'm saying in this. Journalistic writing has a different method than, let's say, essay writing or something like that. In journalistic writing, you have the inverted pyramid. I guess there we go. Where the really important information is at the very top, and then the more specific, specialized stuff, falls below until you get to the end. And it was used in journalism back in the old print days because you might only have 4 column inches, but your story is 7. You just cut it off at 4, and you could do that because of the way the inverted pyramid works. This, I don't know what you call it. I would just trying to hide your subject, but they're very good at winding around the subject, winding around the topic without ever really getting to anything substantive at all. It's almost like some of my students writing. They write around it, but they never get down into it.
Now it's very popular with all sorts of topics like politics and also movie reviews of all things. They got these titles, and if you haven't seen the movie, or if you have seen the movie, you wonder what are they talking about. So you'll click on it, and again, it doesn't give you any information. It promises, but it doesn't deliver.
Mm-hmm. Which angers, especially when you're trying to find information. And it's just another hurdle to get to that information. It's so annoying.
One of the things I find annoying about information is a lot of it contradicts. Like I use this one a lot because I'm focused on this a lot. What should you be eating if you're lifting weights to get muscles, right? It seems like such an easy question. Yet there are so many different answers to that.
No, but yeah, I think there are a lot of different answers to that, and I think a lot of it depends on your own physiology, and how your body reacts.
And that's the thing; you have to test them all until you find what works for you. And part of the reason why I got diabetes was I was following pre-steroid bodybuilding diets, which involved a lot of milk and fruit and and things like
a lot of carbs.
The amount of sugar in those things. I guess knocked my body off balance.
Sugar is addictive.
Yes, it is. Any type of sugar, even if it's healthy sugar.
Well, there is no healthy sugar. It's sugar is sugar.
I don't
care.
Cherries. Cherries are the exception to the rule.
Well, now cherries can help with gout and a lot of other issues, and they are just delicious.
Yes, they are.
As a kid in Michigan, growing up, oh my God, those cherries were just awesome. And you can only get them for a few weeks out of the year, but the black cherries are just sinful. And black cherry ice cream happens to be my favorite. That's putting 2 sugars together.
Mine is French vanilla. French vanilla is in the afterlife. There's going to be healthy cherries and healthy French vanilla ice cream every day.
But cherries are healthy. There's nothing wrong with eating a cherry, but they do have sugar in them. But if they didn't, you wouldn't want to eat them. Have you ever drunk any cherry juice? Which, like I said, is great for gout.
Yes, I still might have a cherry juice I haven't touched in like a year or somewhere.
It is the nastiest stuff you will ever drink. It's $25 or $30 a bottle.
Oh, wow.
It's just talk about horrors. I mean, it is just something that costs that much should at least be, I don't know, 80 proof. But it is just nasty. But to eat real cherries, oh my,
that's the best thing.
They are, and it's so rare though, because like I said, you only get them for about 5 or 6 weeks, and then that's it, and then you have to rely on, as you said, frozen, which you like a lot. And frozen cherries are, most fruit doesn't hold up to freezing very well, but cherries are an exception. I think it almost it changes their composition, but not necessarily for the worse. And like it pairs with ice cream so well,
Yes, it does.
which I'm not supposed to eat. But because I have a problem with lactose, but I make an exception when I see like hand churned black cherry ice cream. Ooh, okay, I'll do that. Probably my second favorite would be mint chocolate chip. I like that a lot too.
Athena likes mint chocolate chip.
Mm. Now you have to be careful with it though. Some of it tastes like toothpaste, and that's nasty.
That's how I
It
felt.
needs to be a little. It needs to be light on the mint and very dark chocolate.
Mhm.
If the chocolate has too much sugar in it, no. And like I said, it has to be a little light on the mint. But if you can hit that happy medium, ooh, yeah, it's very tasty. But like I said, some of it does taste like, ultra bright. It's not very good.
No. We should make a horror movie about like something like that, about how the ice cream
Terrible food.
get terrible food, and someone's stuck in a place where all the food is, you could tell.
Hercules, I'm already living at.
Got to get your phone cam and record it, and we'll edit it.
Well, the town that I live in caters to the palate of a 19-year-old boy. So it does. So everything is like pizza and subs and really heavy, foods, and it's like, oh, it's totally what I don't want. Fortunately, we have some different choice. We have a Mediterranean restaurant here that's actually very good. We went there last Friday, as a matter of fact, for dinner. And there are bright spots like that, but most of it is just like $10 pizzas. One of my student workers several years ago was marveling that what is it, Little Caesars? Is that the chain? That I don't think it's the case now, but they used to have like pizzas for $5, I think.
That sounds about right.
And the student of mine was just going nuts, over it. I'm like, oh my God, and looking at it, I was, kind of horrified. And I said, pizza should cost more than $5. It really should. If it doesn't, I mean, God only knows. I know that there wasn't anything close to real cheese on the pizza, much less the meat or whatever it was that was on this thing. No. Mm-mm.
Well, now that I'm in my 60s, I find myself saying many back in the day stories. And I remember how back in the day pizza was 20 cents, and if you get a Sicilian piece of pizza for 25 cents, and for $2 you can get a whole pie and a 2-liter bottle of soda. And I find myself getting indignant over the prices, because they seem absurd and ridiculous to me. Then I remind myself how old I am. It's like, okay, that's where I am.
Well, working on a college campus for 35 years, I've come to know pizza as currency.
Okay.
Well, I'm serious. It doesn't work so much now, but like 15 or 20 years ago, with poor starving college students, all you had to do to get them to show up to something was order a ton of pizza, and I was the master at it. And that's how you got kids to turn out. Now they won't turn out for that. I don't know why. Free pizza is still free pizza, but even if it is, kind of lousy pizza, like a lot of the kids eat. But I don't. Well, it is. It's kind of like Papa John's, stuff like that. I mean, that's not real pizza.
What draws them now, though? Because here in
nothing. I don't know.
Pizza's the draw.
Maybe leave a trail of money via like breadcrumbs. I can't. I've been doing programming for years. I never had trouble getting the students to come to events, and now it is like, and this has changed drastically in the last 4 or 5 years. Started to turn before the pandemic. The pandemic made it twice as bad. And now I cannot tell you what makes them turn out. I don't know.
Oh,
It's like they've all turned into homebodies. They don't even go out in droves like they used to. Not like we used to.
I've
you know.
noticed that here too, that people don't go out as much, don't walk around as much.
No, not as much. And then there's some that are overly outgoing and extroverted, and you'll always have that, but not anything like it used to be. Like 40 years ago, when I was a freshman, you wanted to get out and mix and meet people, and there was no social media back then, so that was your contact with the outside world. But now it's very different, and I it's not for the better. It's really not for the better.
We've gotten old, Brian. We've gotten old.
I'm getting there, but I'm not quite there yet.
I'm there.
No. These days, you're not considered elderly until, what is it, 75?
Okay, so I'm not there again.
No, you're not there yet. You're still active and vital, and you're still out there in the workforce. Not that you can't be at 75. I've known people at that age who are still working, and God bless them. I think that keeps you going. Is to have you have to have a purpose, right?
Of course.
And hopefully several purposes, not just one. And without that purpose, what do you do? I mean, do you know what I mean?
Great hobby too. I mean, yeah, look at our love of film. It's led to years of recorded discussions, and you have a wonderful website that is legendary, and you have a wonderful collection of memorabilia from cinema. Hobbies are very important, and that hobby tends to keep you vital and alive. Like we were out shopping earlier today, and Athena found a Dracula figure with like the chandelier and all sorts of props.
I think she posted that on Facebook.
Yeah, she must have. So I got it to her. I got it for her as a present. Because I knew that was something that she truly loved, and so she posted about it on Facebook. But I find that those things, stupid little hobbies that we happen to have, whatever they happen to be, either on our own or through fandoms that exist around these things, that's what keeps us alive and vital. And a lot of the rest of life, it doesn't as much.
Well, I got to tell you, it certainly hasn't been my career that is keeping me focused on something lately, although it did at one time. Yeah, you have to have, I think everybody needs a hobby, and perhaps more than one, to tell you the truth, because you've got to use, you have to have something to occupy all the regions of your brain, not just one side. And although academia would like for you to think that it all has to be, left-brained STEM research and such, there's a lot to the creative side of the brain, the right side, that it hasn't really been explored. And gosh, I wish I had enough time for the hobbies that I would like to indulge in, or used to, and have gotten away from. We used to be model railroaders for.
Oh, awesome! I didn't know that.
That was a long time. I want to say early 90s, so that was like 30 plus years ago. We still have all the stuff. Haven't got rid of a thing.
Well, that's a good thing.
Well, when we were buying houses, we bought our first house, and then we moved up with that, bought the second house. I thought, well, gosh, we'll have room now to set up the model train, and we never have had the room. Well, that's not true. We do have the room. I just don't have the time. It takes a lot of time to indulge in a hobby. If you want to do it right, if you're more than just paying it lip service, it can be all consuming, but that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing at all. And I think anything that takes you away from whatever stress that you're dealing with, in your public life, or in your employed life, I should say, anything that takes you out of that and puts you into a completely different world in 5 minutes is something you should really focus on. I think that's a good hobby, and everyone should have at least one hobby, if not two or three.
I believe the same, that the more hobbies, the better. And
And I know some people who don't have any hobbies, and yeah, they disengage really easily. I don't think they live that long, because I don't think they have anything to live for.
that's very true. It's very sad.
Sorry for the downer there.
Oh, it's very true. And if we could stress to people that they should find their passion and pursue it, whatever their passion happens to be. And sometimes you wind up in like the weirdest places in life that are very fulfilling, because you're not dancing to somebody else's drum or to society's drum. You're doing your own thing, whatever your thing happens to be. Like I was told at a meeting, and this happens to me a lot. When I was in New York, it was told to me in many meetings, because I used to have the television show, and I used to have fur and leather and a sword and all this other stuff. When I was sent for professional meetings to talk about professional things by my employers, people used to complain because they expected me to come there in fur with a sword and talk about rehabilitation, or vocational rehabilitation, or workforce development in my whole getup, with the hoop earrings and the fur vest and the belts and all that type of stuff. And now it's happening here in Tenafly. A couple of people have told me that since I'm not wearing the lion skin and all the other stuff I used to wear before the pandemic and wander around in, that they miss that, and I should go back to doing it. So my inclinations, my unique creative self-expression, I guess, entertains and adds value to the gestalt of the town. So I should start doing it. And I don't mind doing it. I love life is a stage, like Shakespeare said.
Well, but there again, though, you have a specific message to deliver, and what better way to get people to pay attention to you than all the drag that you just mentioned. And if as long as it draws people to you, that gives you carte blanche to send your message out. I think that's amazing. And if you think about it, it's so charismatic as well. Just to be able to envision yourself as a certain character or a certain type, and to be able to go out there and say something positive and preach something positive, which we all need to hear anymore. I think that's a great way to get your message across. Why not? I got to say that in the past, I've not done what you do, but I was a blood drop once. I've been Gumby, a gorilla.
That's awesome.
Well, this is all in the name of getting my job done. This is, I was paid, while I was on the clock. But back in the old days, I don't know if it would work now. Maybe I should try that at some point. But I have a vast collection, a semi-vast collection of costumes. I've got a great gorilla costume that I've used for fairs, housing fairs, several times. And it draws people to you. And it makes you wonder, it makes them wonder, what your message is. If you're walking around, in full drag, it does. I think that's a great way to get your message across.
Yeah, I had the mythical getup, and again, the lion skin and the ancient Greek peplumi type clothing, and the wide belt, and the sandals, and the armbands. And I remember when we moved to Pennsylvania, and I wanted to, get a good position. I went on interviews in my getup and gave them my professional resume on parchment, and they didn't know what to make of me. What do you make of this person? But I also talked to newspapers. So the following week, I was in all the newspapers down there. So the phone was ringing, and I was getting interviews, and I got hired by a college, and it was a lot of fun for the years that I did it. And then I worked in other colleges and other places and did other things. But just that's a violation of the norms.
It is. We are, we have been telling students for years, and I do a lot of career development,
Mhm.
with college students, and teach them how to present themselves, during interviews and such. And we tell them that they're supposed to dress somewhere from business casual on up, depending on what their major is. Let's say a marketing major might veer toward the casual, where, I don't know, an accounting major might go for business professional or something like that. But, I don't think that works for every major, and it certainly doesn't work for every kind of job. And if you do need, somebody who is your public representative, you need somebody who's memorable. You've got to have somebody who elicits a response from people. And if wearing your gladiator leathers doesn't, then why not? I think that's amazing. I hate, well, don't you hate being put in a box? But don't you hate being put in a box like that, where you're having to wear a tie, and
I haven't worn a tie
and,
in years.
and a shirt collar that's up like this, and that's so uncomfortable. And you can, you can look nice, you can look clean, and you'll comb your hair, and basic grooming, I guess, is what I'm going for. But you really don't need to look uncomfortable.
No,
You know what I mean?
and I found that again, I was very good at the things I did. So places allow for a lot of eccentricity. I remember I used to give references
Well, higher education does. I will say that.
that I would give references that wouldn't say nice things about me, but they would, tell how how I actually was. And I felt that the employer deserved that. And one person, she used to tell the whoever employer called, because I worked there for a number of years, she would say, you can't treat him like an employee. And they would ask what she meant. And she would say, did he act like an employee? No. So she would actually give them like an operating manual on how to best work for me. And then that was good. And I would always take off whatever like jacket or thing I was wearing to show that I had tattoos up and down my arm. You could see I had long hair. I had long hair. So got those out of the way really fast. And it worked for me time and time again, because I wasn't selling what what an employee was. I had skills that were very hard to find. I had a vision, and I was very talented. So that's what I was selling, not how good I look in a suit and with short hair and things like that.
But if your physical appearance can draw people in, I mean, that's everything. And I don't mean from the standpoint of looking like everybody else. I mean standing out, looking a little different, or a lot different, as it might be. That's really where it's at. But like I said, here in college, we're teaching them to have this sort of homogenous look. I think we're starting to break away from that, though. I can remember just not that long ago, we were telling students to hide their tattoos, essentially.
Yeah, I remember those days. Hide the
And,
tattoos.
we're not telling them that anymore. And if they were dyeing their hair blue or whatnot, we were telling them take it back to something that looked kind of natural. We don't do that much anymore.
I'm heartened to hear that.
Well, to tell you the truth, I think the blue hair thing is dumb, but not because of the way it looks so much, but because of what those people are doing to their hair. It's all going to fall out. You strip the color out of your hair that many times, that's bad. No, it's going to fall out. Take care of your hair and skin because you're going to need it or want it one day, even if you don't have it.
And on those words, I must close the show. I've been developing new shows lately. I'm really excited about them. So we had a new show yesterday. We had a new show earlier today, and there are going to be new shows popping up over the next few weeks. So I have to make phone calls to make those shows come together. But thank you, Brian. I enjoy this immensely. You're
Thank you.
awesome. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Okay, look me up at briansdrivingtheater.com. And if you want to interact with me, hit me up on Facebook. Just run a search for Brian's Drive-In Theater and you will find my Facebook presence.
And very soon there will be the special for the 25th anniversary of Brian's Drive-In Theater here on Zoom on Mount Olympus. Have a wonderful evening. Say hi to Greg, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Hercules. Have a good evening and say hi to Athena for me.
I most certainly will.
Good night.
Good night.